Edward Pernay was born in 1726 in the English town of Sunbridge, the son of a well-known and respected vicar in the Church of England. Young Edward grew up in and around the parish church. Early on, he demonstrated an interest in religious matters, and when his father, Vincent, was visited by traveling evangelists, Edward would sit and listen intently to their conversations. As the evangelical movement headed by John and Charles Wesley swept across the English countryside, the elder Pernay became a trusted counselor to the younger preachers. Often John Wesley would ride up to the parish on horseback, anxious to discuss with the vicar some matter of doctrine or administration. It was during these visits that Edward developed an admiration for the daring Wesley in his determined efforts to break from the traditional forms of the Anglican Church. Just as young Timothy, in New Testament times, left home to follow his hero, Paul, Edward Pernay broke with his traditionalist background and cast his lot with the Wesleys. If it was adventure he sought, he was not to be disappointed, for shortly after his association with John Wesley, Pernay was involved in incidents of persecution, where, according to Wesley's diary, he was thrown down and rolled in mud and mire. Stones were hurled and windows broken. Despite this persecution, Pernay continued as a faithful disciple of Wesley, being present with the evangelist at virtually all of his preaching meetings. Inspired by his mentor, Edward also began to preach, but determined never to do so in the presence of John Wesley. Wesley, 18 years his senior, felt the young man needed to overcome this fear and decided to force the issue. Before a large congregation one Sunday morning, John Wesley smiled down at his young friend, then dramatically announced to the waiting parishioners that the following day they would be treated to a wonderful message from young Edward Pernay. Pernay was dumbstruck and not a little irritated that Wesley would put him in such an uncomfortable position. He did not wish to cause public embarrassment by refusing the evangelist's request, but neither did he feel prepared or inclined to present the next day's sermon. In the end, Pernay's will and determination brought to mind the solution to his dilemma. In the morning, he mounted the pulpit, smiled confidently at Wesley and the eager congregation, and then announced, "Although I have no sermon of my own to give to you, I promise you I shall deliver the finest one ever heard." He then opened his Bible and proceeded to read the Sermon on the Mount, word for word. When he completed the reading, he closed the book, smiled, and took his seat without comment. Perhaps it was this indelible streak of independence that finally led Pernay to break with the Wesleys several years later over the issue of evangelists administering the sacraments. Whatever the reason, Edward Pernay left the Wesleys and became the pastor of an independent church at Canterbury, England. As he pastored his little flock of country folk, Pernay saw the need for new and inspiring hymns. Using his abundant gifts as a writer, he wrote 3 small volumes of hymns published in 1756, 1782, and 1785. All Hail the Power of Jesus' Name was included in the second volume, having been previously published alone in a 1779 issue of Gospel magazine. The hymn affirms Pernay's conviction that God ought always to be worshipped in great glory and honor, with an emphasis upon his holy kingship, paired with a beautiful melody written by Edward Shrubsole. The hymn became popular with congregations across England. When the text was first introduced in America, however, a self-taught Massachusetts carpenter composed the tune "Coronation" for the stirring words, and it is to this tune that the hymn is best known in the United States. The majestic words of Pernay's hymn have inspired Christians around the world for the past 2 centuries with an appeal that touches the hearts of those from every walk of life. Missionaries have related how groups of unlearned tribesmen were moved to tears by the hymn's proclamation, and it is said that whenever Queen Victoria had the hymn played, she would direct that her jeweled crown be removed in deference to the hymn's message that Jesus should be crowned Lord of all. All hail the power of Jesus' name, let angels prostrate fall. bring forth the royal diadem, and crown him Lord of all. Bring forth the royal diadem, and crown him Lord of all. Ye chosen seed of Israel's race, He ransomed from the fall. Hail him who saves you by his grace, and crown him Lord of all. Hail him who saves you by his grace, and crown him Lord of all. Let every kindred, every tribe on this terrestrial ball to him all majesty ascribe, and crown him Lord of all. To him all majesty ascribe, and crown him Lord of all. Oh, that with yonder sacred throng we at his feet may fall. We'll join the everlasting song, and crown him Lord of all. We'll join the everlasting song, and crown him Lord